Well, hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and this video is a little different than most that we do. It's not about murder, an assault, or even a missing person. It's about a young man who doesn't communicate well, and he's been found wandering the streets of Midland, Texas. Was he dumped off by caretakers who couldn't carry the responsibility any longer, or did this kid just walk away? Well, hello everybody. Make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button, and I want to thank Michelle Morris right out of the gates for bringing this one to my attention. I'm out of town, but I thought this was important enough that we ought to get it out today and ask for your help on this one. On January 29th, police officers in Midland, Texas found a non-speaking boy walking along the streets. He was somewhere between the age of 15 and 20, and he was walking all alone in an alley. Now, if you're from Midland, it was in the area of Ward Street and Shandon Avenue. But it's an alleyway with a bunch of dumpsters. I suspect he might have been looking for food, but again, that's speculation based on the fact that it looks like he'd been wandering for a few days. Now, this young man is unable to communicate, and officers have no idea who he is or where he's from. They don't even know if he's got parents who care about him or if he's been on his own for a long, long time. They found the young man walking along with a helmet on and packing some toys, and police are speculating that he probably found those things along the way. Again, if you know anything about this young man, please reach out to the Midland, Texas Police Department immediately. For the past week, the Midland Police Department has reached out to the local media, to other agencies, and to social media, hoping that somebody might help them understand who this young man is. In fact, the news posted this story right after he was recovered.
Developing now at 6, we are learning more about a nonverbal teen that was found in Midland. A press conference was held today as officers are still searching for his family, now 5 days after he was found. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Carson Bush-Jost.
And I'm Madeline Bierster. ABC Big 2's Rachel Hallam joins us live outside Midland Police Department now.
Yeah, Rachel, Midland PD is trying to spread the word about this young boy to get more help from the public to find his family.
Yeah, police say when the nonverbal teen, who they believe was found on Sunday between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, they immediately tried searching for his family. And as of today, they have yet to identify the boy himself, let alone his family. Sunday, January 29th, Midland police were called to the intersection of Ward Street and Shandon Avenue for a check person request. When officers arrived, they found a boy who they believe is aged 13 through 17. When trying to collect information, officers recognized the boy may have a mental disability and was nonverbal, and detectives are still trying to identify the child.
Because he is nonverbal, he can't communicate with us. He can't tell us what he's feeling, where he's from, where he came from, who he was living with last, so we actually have no idea where he is from.
His pictures have been shared all across social media in hopes of finding out who the teen is. On Tuesday evening, officers collected DNA and fingerprints from the child, who they also say wrote down the name Cordarius on paper several times. Detectives say if they can find family of the child, there is the possibility that charges can be filed.
We could look at the charge of injury to a child for them simply just not providing his basic needs and allowing him to wander the street. You could also look at endangering a child because he's been out on his own for so long and no one has called to say, hey, this is my son. I don't know where he's been, and we you guys have them.
And Thursday afternoon, MPD confirmed the child is still in custody of Child Protective Services while police continue to investigate, saying he is healthy and in good spirits.
As far as I know, he's healthy and he's warm and he's fed and happy as far as I know.
MPD hopes by continuing to spread the child's pictures across the internet, they can find his family as soon as possible.
I hope it gets out as widely as possible so that way we can find maybe a cousin, an aunt, a sibling, a step-sibling, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, anyone who recognizes him. Even a neighbor, a former neighbor, that can come forward and say, hey, I think this child is this child and this is why.
MPD is also asking for any additional camera footage that anyone in the area might have. They ask that if you do live in that area of Ward Street and Shandon Avenue and surrounding streets, that you send any camera footage you may have of the child to the email of the head detective Alonzo at jalonzo@midlandtexas.gov. Now, MPD says, as for the rumors spreading around social media that the child could be the child missing Florida since 2009, detectives say there is no connection between these two cases. Now, however, they are in contact with the sheriff's department in the area to ensure that they are not the same child, and DNA samples have been sent down to Florida for comparison. Reporting live in Midland, Rachel Hallam, ABC Big 2 News.
This young man now sits in protective custody while they try to figure out who he is. They've taken DNA and fingerprints from him in hopes that they can figure out who he is. And in efforts to find out his name, he scribbled a couple of times Cordarius. And since he wrote that on paper, people are thinking that that might be who he is. Heck, this is even fired up speculation that he's a missing boy from Florida from 14 years earlier. But law enforcement says they do not believe that's the case. Now, News West 9 did a great job on a story about that process of how DNA is going to be used in trying to figure out who he is. Let's watch that.
Giving you updates all week long about the unidentified teen who was found alone in Midland. Tyler Dupnick joining us now. And Tyler, you were there to speak with the division of the Midland Police Department that is handling this DNA process. So what more did they tell you, Tyler?
Alex, ultimately it was the crime scene unit at MPD that sent the boy's DNA to a lab at the University of North Texas for further evaluation. They gave me a few details regarding this case, and much like the opinions of most in the community, this is truly a unique one.
In my career of over 12 years, I've not run into a case like this where we've had an unidentified individual, especially a living, potentially a juvenile or a child, that has taken this long to be identified.
It was Sunday afternoon when this teen was found alone in an alley around the area of Shandon Avenue and Ward Street in Midland. The nonverbal boy was isolated in a neighborhood on a path of rocks, gravel, and fencing with no known family and no identity. However, his DNA results could change that. And MPD's crime scene unit spoke with the lab at the University of North Texas earlier this morning to clarify the time frame of completion.
Unfortunately, with DNA, because we've had other cases where, we ask if it's possible to expedite, part of the issue is just the amount of time that it takes to analyze and extract that DNA just to begin with. So the lab is aware of the circumstances, and I think they're going to try to work it as quickly as they can.
Once the results are completed, it will likely be placed into two databases, CODIS, or Combined DNA Index System at the state level, and INDIS, or National DNA Index System at the federal level. From there, the goal for UNT is to find a potential match with a family member.
And then if that's the case, then their DNA scientists can go in and actually look at that and determine whether that is a match or not. Also, if there are other samples that they wanted to compare it to, that's their specialty.
DNA testing is a more advanced option, and with the teen unable to positively identify himself, it was called upon for this situation.
It's one of those where we want to make absolutely sure of potentially who this individual is.
So here's the ask for all of you. If you know anything about this young man, please contact the Midland, Texas Police Department immediately and share this story with everybody you know. Would you please? Just take the link and share it with everyone you know. Let's use the power of the true crime community to get the word out and hopefully help this young man get back to his family. And speaking of his family, I really fear that this young man might have been dumped by a family member who just couldn't care for him any longer. And if that's the case, police need to locate the family members, and there needs to be a long discussion held to figure out what's going on. I don't care whether it's Texas where it's warmer or up here in the north where it's a whole lot colder right now. Dropping somebody off in the middle of the night when it's cold is really something pretty sad. In fact, right now in Texas, it's only 40 degrees. And again, if it's correct, Cordarius is his name, and he's described as an uncommunicative young man who's believed to be between 15 and 20 years old. Now, the name, I think, is pretty darn important because it might point investigators back to family, heritage, or even a community within communities where he might have come from. Now, there are numerous sources that suggest that the name Cordarius means son of Allah. In Latin, it means lamb. So it sounds like it's something reaching back, and of course, the young man deserves to be found. Question is he of Islamic or Muslim origin? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, again, Michelle, thanks so much for bringing it to my attention, and I hope that together we can help bring some light to this, shed and share the story, and get some folks to call back to the police department. Now, if you'd like to hear the short press conference that the Midland police did after they found this young man, I'm going to post it immediately after the closing little tune. And again, let the police know if you know something. So thanks for supporting Profiling Evil, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.
What are some of the challenges that this case has presented, especially with the child being nonverbal?
Well, because he is nonverbal, he can't communicate with us. He can't tell us what he's feeling, where he's from, where he came from, who he was living with last. So we actually have no idea where he is from.
I know he was able to write his name, or at least what you think is his name, on multiple occasions. Have there been other kind of attempts to communicate with him through certain devices that nonverbal, typically autistic people use?
In reference to that, I cannot comment at this time.
Okay.
Detective, there's a lot of connection to a missing boy in Collier County in Florida, Fort Myers area. Is there any ties to him being missing? Is it the same boy? Do you have any information on that?
At this time, due to physical characteristics of the child that we have compared to the physical characteristics that the child has in Florida, we do not believe it's going to be the same child. However, we have obtained a DNA sample from the child here, and we are going to compare it to the missing child from Florida.
Can you tell us about his current health as of right now?
As far as I know, he's healthy and he's warm and he's fed and happy, as far as I know.
How long does that DNA sample typically take to get back?
Typically, it could take several weeks. We send our DNA sample out to Dallas, and because they are currently snowed in and no one is in the office at this time, we cannot even request it to be expedited or get an estimated time of how long it will take.
At this point in your investigation, you may not be able to say, but is there a part of this investigation that's leaning more towards he is from Midland or he may be out of state?
We have no idea where he's from, ma'am.
And there have been no school records that have been able to be traced back to him?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
And I know oftentimes individuals with special needs are enrolled in some kind of federal benefits. We haven't been able to find anything on that.
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Has his demeanor changed since NPD picked him up, or is he still about the same?
He's still about the same, yes, sir.
A lot of people were wondering if he was found with the helmet that he was pictured with and the balls and things, or those were given to him by officers.
He was found with those items.
Okay. And do we think they were his?
No, ma'am, we think he picked them up along the way.
What was his overall demeanor when he was first found?
I can't really tell you what his demeanor like because it's very difficult to get that from a child that's in his state.
What's his current condition right now? Is he in good spirits? Is he kind of going along with the process? How's he doing now?
I would say he's going along with the process. Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of criminal investigation pending looking into who he was in original care with?
I believe that if we can figure out who he was in original care and we can file charges if they broke the law, yes, ma'am, there will be charges following.
What kind of charges could those be?
You could look at the charge of injury to a child for them simply just not providing his basic needs and allowing him to wander the street. You could also look at endangering a child because he's been out on his own for so long and no one has called to say, hey, this is my son. I don't know where he's been, and we guys have them.
Speaking of that, do you know how long he's been out on his own? Do you have a sort of timeline at all? Or?
No, sir, we do not.
Have you guys ever handled situations like this before, or is this just really a rarity?
This is a rarity, yes, sir. It's the first time that I can remember a situation like this.
Right.
Have you cross-referenced with the districts to see if a name matches with the name he provided?
We have looked into different systems where we have NamUs and NCMEC, and we used the name that he had provided to us, and I have not been able to find a child that matches him or a missing person that matches his description.
Of course, best case scenario is there is a family out there that loves this child looking for him. But if he is not able to be identified, what would come next?
Right now he's in state custody, and so if they couldn't find a family for him, his family, then he would be in permanent state custody.
And if he does happen to be over 18, does that change anything?
I do not know. I do not know, ma'am.
Obviously.
Has the department or the rest of the search teams, have they maybe considered the fact that his parents might be passed away or his family, he might not have a family?
We have considered all avenues of approach in reference to this case.
Obviously, this case has touched a lot of people, not only just here in our community, but really nationwide. What is it about this case that you think has really gripped people?
Well, he is an obvious special needs child who's been left out on his own, roaming the streets, and we don't know how long he's been out there for.
Do you plan to provide another update for us here in person or maybe down the line with this investigation just to see how he's doing and kind of next steps that you have?
Yes, sir. I hope so. I hope we can.
Timeline at this point, though, is still kind of murky, right?
Very murky. Yes, sir.
I know Midland Police has worked extremely well with us, the media, in trying to further spread this information. What is your hope that this information kind of gets out as widely as possible?
I hope it gets out as widely as possible so that way we can find maybe a cousin, an aunt, a sibling, a step-sibling, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, anyone who recognizes him, even a neighbor, a former neighbor that can come forward and say, hey, I think this child is this child and this is why. So everyone who does call in tips and says those things, says, hey, I think I remember this child from Tennessee, when I lived in Tennessee, that information is forwarded to the correct department so it can be pushed out and they can go check on those things to say, well, did he go to school in Tennessee? Is this correct or is it a red herring?
I know a lot of people on social media especially have asked if there are any ways that they can help, because again, this has touched the hearts of a lot of people. Is there anything in place that people may be able to donate? Clothes, money, so on?
Right now, I believe we'd rather them donate the clothes directly to the Midland Police Department, and then we would take them to the child as long as he's still staying here in Midland. But he may move at some point. We just don't know. And then share the post as much as possible. Just keep sharing it so it can get out there and people can see his face.
Detective, just to clarify, you don't believe that he has any ties to Collier County, Florida or anything?
At this time, no, sir.
Have you been in contact with the Sheriff's Department down there?
Yes, sir, I have.
Have they given you any information at all or anything?
We are sharing information back and forth. Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions? Well, since we are asking for the public's assistance in this case, do you mind reminding everyone where and when he was found?
He was found on January 29th at 14:11 is when the call came into the Midland Police Department. And he was found in the area of the intersection of Ward and Shandon here in Midland.